Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dumb Talks. I'm your host, Dan Mitchem. Today, we have a 46-year comedy veteran, headlined at all the major comedy clubs, been on The Tonight Show, The Late Late Show, and ladies, get this, he is an ex-male stripper. Give it up for the one and the only Mr. Perry Kurtz. What's up, Perry?
Hey, wait for the applause to die down.
Oh, hang on, yeah.
Everybody, please go back to your seats. Please put the dollar bills away. We'll do this afterwards. Right now, me and Dan are recording. Let me take it all back.
So tell me, how did you get started being you?
Well, I've always been the funny guy, not the class clown, but I was hyperactive, so I always had a seat next to the teacher's desk so they could keep an eye on me. If I saw something or heard something, I would wait until it was quiet and then drop the punchline. I'm the same way at parties now. I go there and people go, "You're so quiet." I go, "Yeah," and then watch, and then all of a sudden something will happen and boom, I'll nail it and people go crazy. I graduated high school, went to art school, and then I moved to San Francisco. Now, during that time, I started doing comedy in Philadelphia. I was taking comedy classes and found that I was a natural. The instructor said, "Kurtz, you're just naturally funny." I said, "Well, I can't help it. It's my face." And I started going up to New York because New York was 93 miles from Philadelphia. While I was up there, I remember playing at Caroline's. And there was this guy named Jerry who I had heard about who was headline clubs. Jerry Seinfeld, I don't know if you've heard of him. He was not a big star yet, but
Yeah.
he was headlining nationally. And we're standing in the lounge talking, and all of a sudden the guy comes out and goes, "Kurtz, you're up." So I run up on stage. I do my 7 or 8 minutes, whatever it was, had a great set because I don't do material. I just talk about my life. But I have timing and delivery, and I understand that comedy is all about exaggeration and reversals and a switch and humanizing animals and exuding real emotion, which is what the audience responds to. And when I get done, he goes running past me in the aisle and he hits my hand. He says, "Hang out." So I watched him get up there and he did really well. He comes out. We're standing in the lobby. This gorgeous little blonde comes up to him and starts rubbing his arm. "Oh, you are so funny. I just love you. You were great. Oh, we need to go out." And she gives him a napkin with her number written on it. She goes in and he
Yeah.
looks at me and goes, "What am I going to do with this?" I said, "Well, you'll call her up and you'll probably fuck her." He goes, "You think I got a chance?" I said, "She gave you her number." He was so naive. So I met him up there and met some other famous people. And then I moved to San Francisco in 79 and started over from there. I moved out. I was down to my last $200 and I had a pair of roller skates with headlights and taillights and my electric guitar. And I moved out there and started from scratch.
So what was it like living in San Fran?
Those were the days of comedy. It was really strong. We all hung out at a club called the Holy City Zoo, which is a place where Robin Williams was discovered as a bartender and then put on to Mork and Mindy. And I met him, and he used to just hang out. We all hung out. He was just one of the guys, and we all stood outside and smoked pot. And you're out there taking a hit off a joint, and the guy would come out and go, "You're up." I remember once he said, "You're up, Kurtz." And I ran on stage and I exhaled this big puff of smoke. It filled the room and everybody was clapping and laughing. And after I get done, he says, "You know what? That wasn't bad." I said, "What do you mean, the set?" He says, "No, we sold 30% more munchies after your set."
I'm jealous you met Robin.
Him and I, well, if you go to my website, perrykurtz.com, or you go to my YouTube page or wherever that, you'll see a picture of me and Robin and Harry Anderson and Gary Muldeer and Kevin Pollak all on one page. Robin got me a gig hosting the benefit for Somalia at the old Waldorf in San Francisco in 1981. And in the picture, I'm in the middle and Robin's on the right side. But Robin and I became very close. We just had an instant affinity, and I was hosting a show every Tuesday and Thursday night for about 4 or 5 years, and he would come in and start the show with me just doing improv, just the two of us going off because I can do characters. "Hello, good to see you. What are you talking about?" So we would do these characters for like an hour. And then when he was doing big shows for like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people, I was invited and he would get me up there and we'd have 100-foot cords and go out into the audience and we would do like 30 minutes off of each other. So we were very close. And when he was down here and he would play the Improv or Laugh Factory, he would invite me to go over there. When he died, I got a call that night, 6 hours after he killed himself, from his wife, who I knew. It's weird. I actually dated his first wife before he did. She was the heir to the Eastman Kodak family, Valerie, and she met him and dumped me for him. So I get a call from his ex-wife, and she told me what really happened, and we cried for about 2 hours. And she calls me every anniversary of his death and every birthday of his. He was about a half year younger than me, and she told me the real story of why he killed himself.
I didn't even know the guy personally, and I still cried when I found out that he died.
I see pictures of him, and it has me hysterical. I just found a slide which goes back to probably 1983 of him and I standing in the doorway, but it's all washed out, and I got to find somebody to see if they can revive it. But it's the
Yeah.
only picture I have of him and I. I knew some amazing people when I flew out there. And sitting next to me on the plane leaving from New York was this guy named Kevin Meaney. And I didn't know who he was, and we became good friends. And when he got to San Francisco and I got to San Francisco, we both went there to the club and became best friends. And he died like 4 years ago. I got to know him really well. He was on Two Broke Girls a while ago, and he called me to come out to help him with the blocking. He was supposed to play a gay preacher. And I said, well, they got that right, but you're far from a preacher. Kevin was a very funny man, very sweet man. He left a beautiful daughter. I've just been very lucky. I've worked with a lot of great comedians, and San Francisco definitely was the start of it.
You mentioned earlier you were going touring on the road and stuff.
Yeah, well, when I first got to San Francisco, a couple nights a week, I was emceeing at the Male Strip Show on Broadway. Male Strip Show for women. I have to point that out because it's San Francisco. And in San Francisco, there's a lot of guys who will, let's just say, they'll bend over forwards for you. Are you getting my gist? They never met a dick they didn't lick. So on Broadway was this Male Strip Show, and somebody told me that the MC was leaving, and I got a job working there. And the club was owned by the mafia, and I was the new Lenny Bruce on Broadway in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I met a guy named Dr. Irwin Corey, who was a crazy scientist comedian back in the 60s. And I met Rodney Dangerfield, became very, very good friends with him. And he was flying me to New York to work at his club 3 times a year. That was good money. I was $2,800 a week, which is
Wow.
not bad. And I was only working 5 nights a week. And he told me, don't bring any money. He paid for everything. First class airfare. If I wanted to go shopping, there was a credit card waiting for me, or he had an open account that he would call a limo. It was just amazing. And here's a story about Rodney. Most comedians tend to imbibe on one type of intoxicant or the other. Rodney loved marijuana. Because I smoked, I was headlining his room and I was doing hour shows. And all my stand-up is really based on the audience and their attitude and what's going on in the room. I only know that I'm probably going to open by dancing one way or the other. Now my strip routine is just basically taking off my jacket. In those days, I would strip down to my G-string. Fortunately, I was able to have an enlarged fit. I was doing an hour there, and then Rodney would get up and do some time. It was magic. When he was in town, everybody knew, and the club was always, always packed with people. And so he would get up and follow me. One night I get done and he's standing there. He does set and he gets done, comes over, he goes, hey, come here. And his real name is Jack Roy. And I just called him Jack. Turns out he used to date my mother's best friend back in Philadelphia. She went to see him when he played in New Jersey, and he gets up on stage and he looks at her and goes, Flora, didn't I fuck you in 43? Which he did. So he calls me over and he goes, so Perry, come here. This is Danny. I said, hi, Danny. Danny looks at me and he's like my height, but he looks really young. And he's, Mr. Kurtz, you're really funny. Do you have any idea what you're talking about up there? I go, not a clue. I read the crowd and I feel I give them what they want. The audience is like the ocean. It's always changing. He goes, you're really natural up there. I went, thank you. And then Jack says, yeah, Danny's going to write for me. He's 18 and he's going to write for me. He gets me. And I go, Jack, how hard is it to get you? It's the same fucking joke every time. He goes, yeah, but I don't learn very well. So what he does is he writes my hand motions so I know what to do with my hands, so I know where my jokes are and what's going, and it helps me set up my timing. And Jay Leno was the same way. I wrote for Jay for 12 years. With Jay, I wrote jokes about whoever was on last night or what happened. Example, when Michael Jackson was acquitted, he comes out, puts his hand up. He says, see, last night, Michael Jackson was acquitted. He was so surprised at the outcome, he turned whiter. He's just invisible now. He's just a hat and a suit. And he added on the hat and the suit. And that got me another $50 because I got $50 a joke. So Danny's like, oh man, you're great, Mr. Kurtz. Jack says, you know what? We're going to go out in the alley and smoke a joint. You're coming, right? And I said, of course I am. We go out there. And the alleyways in New York, it's dumpsters on one side, dumpsters on the other side. And you have to move out of the way when the cars come down. So Jack pulls out a joint, takes a hit, passes the kid, starts to pee on the dumpster. The kid takes a hit, passes it to me, and I take a hit. I pass it back to the kid. I pull mine out. I start to pee on the dumpster. The kid takes the joint, puts it down on top of the dumpster, starts to pee, turns his head, looks at me with the biggest smile you could ever imagine, and he goes, this is the best day of my life, because he's peeing with Rodney Dangerfield. So it shows you life is a lot about, your situation where you are. But Rodney was a great guy. And then when I moved down here, he'd be on at the Laugh Factory. He would call me over there to hang out with him there. He was a really sweet man. I met this other comic named Milton Berle, who was the original comic on television. And
Yeah.
he became like my grandfather and mentor. And he taught me about comedy is really about real life. And if you use real emotion, they can read it. And he taught me. And he was flying me down to LA, let's see, from about 87, 89, was just a couple of years. And I was playing at the Friars Club, which is
Yeah.
amazing because you never know who was out there. Well, one night they let me do 11 minutes instead of 5. I get off the stage and the crowd's going crazy. And up walks Johnny Carson. He takes my hand in his hands, says, kid, you got it great, man. You're naturally funny and you're likable. That's very unusual for a comedian. I said, what do you mean? He says, most comedians are complete assholes. I don't get that from you. I turn around, there's Phyllis Diller, who was the first woman in comedy. She hugs me, grabs my head, and kisses me flat on the lips, and her wig falls off. Oh, you dropped your wig. She goes, fuck it, I got lots of them. I get a tap on the shoulder. I turn around, there's a little fat bald guy, takes my hand in one hand, and he goes, hey, I saw your show, kid. And he smacks my face and goes, nice try, Don Rickles. Carson walks up to me and says, if Rickles heckled you, then you have a future in comedy. And I guess he was right. And so, I mean, the people I have known, my first decent gig on the road was in 84. I was middling outside of Denver for this comic named Roseanne. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if she ever became famous. She got really upset because in those days I was closing with my strip routine, which is basically a parody of what real strippers do. I unbutton my shirt, I show you a nipple, I pretend I'm pulling out my chest hair, I shake my hips, I run out to the audience, I get a woman to touch my chest, and then I drop my jacket at the end. So she asked me if I could do that in the beginning of my set instead of closing with it. She said it's going to make me really hard to follow a guy who strips. I said, okay. That was Tuesday through Saturday. So that was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That was a 5-night gig, 3 shows on Saturday. By Thursday night, she said to me, listen, you're really strong. I'm still having trouble following you. Why don't we co-headline? I said, what's that mean? She said, well, they drink a lot more for the later show. So why don't I headline the first show and you headline the second and third shows? And I said, okay. And I wound up getting more money for that.
Nice.
Never saw her again, although I ran into Tom Arnold somewhere. I don't remember. Oh, it was at the Laugh Factory. He came up after me after I did a set at the Laugh Factory. And I've been fortunate. I mean, I know Ellen DeGeneres from 84 when I moved down here to LA. Kinnison was just getting into the Comedy Store. Bobcat Goldthwait, who I've known since San Francisco in the 80s, he was working out. I met Letterman. I followed and preceded Richard Pryor about 9 times. I followed Robin Williams 13 times to the point where nobody wanted to follow him. And I've just been really fortunate, but I've always gone with just telling real stories. Here's what happened today, and this is what I tell new comics. And I mentor any new comic. If I meet a comic and they're new, I go, let me work with you. You want to send me money? Here's my Venmo. By the way, my Venmo is Perry Kurtz if you want to send me anything. Last 16 years, I've been doing senior shows. Because I got married in 1990 to a woman with 3 kids. And I found out they didn't know their fathers. So I said, I'm going to marry all of you specifically to be a father. And in 2003, we went on the road for 2 years. And when we came back, TV had been inundated with the Showtime special and Comedy Time special and this special and the one-man special, and comedy clubs weren't paying what they were when I left. When I was working at the Comedy Store, I was making $1,800 to $2,000 a week, which was pretty good money in '89. When I came back, there was no money at the comedy clubs, so I started working at senior shows. They're a lot of fun because they say whatever they want. Well, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be here on your cast, as they're called.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself, Daniel.
thank you. And that's Dumb Talks. Thanks again for listening. Be sure to subscribe at the bottom for future episodes. Who knows? Maybe I'll be talking with you next.